All right. This is a really important issue. I'm going to try on these unplugged segments. Last time I did it on the 3.5 trillion, and we got a lot of comments that people really enjoyed kind of understanding, the metaphors about how much money that really is. So I'm going to really try to break this segment down, somewhat the same way. It's really about Biden's poll numbers and the real significance to his poll numbers. But I also want to turn it into the messaging platform in which the Biden administration is imploring, or lack thereof, if you will, on the messaging coming out of the White House, and the damage that I believe it is doing to his policies. Never has there been a presidential candidate that we heard really less from. I mean, I think that's a standard thing that everyone could or should be able to agree on, that he really didn't hold a lot of press conferences. There really wasn't a lot of information that was coming out. This was really the world against Trump. And I understand it. I mean, I understand that people on certain persuasions had had enough of Donald Trump, and they would have elected anybody that was running against him. The media, I felt, on all sides, failed to literally vet this president and this administration based on what are you going to do with these 10 things, right? Because these are things that we want to know. Now, you're talking or you're listening to a guy, if you will, that's an independent voter. I had not made up my mind until the end about who I was going to vote with. Who I voted for is really private. But I hadn't made up my mind. I'm one of those independents that really wants to see across the board all the issues. But there was really nothing to see. We had 2 debates. Trump blew the first debate, started yelling at everybody. I mean, I was embarrassed for the guy, okay? It was awful. But we had a guy then get elected, the first female vice president, first African-American vice president. There was some reason to be happy about the country was going to move forward and not backward. Well, according to these poll numbers, almost in every category, Quinnipiac University is one of the foremost authorities on polls and one that I personally follow. I think that they're across the board, not political. I think they're really based on, talking to a cross-section of people. I'm going to read some of this, and it's pretty unbelievable what you're going to hear. And then we're going to play a tape, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about, if I was advising the administration, what I would do. So, in the new poll that was done on October the 6th, the overall Biden numbers, negative to positive, approval to disapproval, 38% approval, 53% disapproval. Those are pretty bad numbers. But I think when you look inside the poll numbers, see, I've always said with polls, when you look inside the poll numbers, you really get yourself to really understand how the overall numbers really work. So I'm going to break it down into 10 or 12 different categories, and I'm going to explain these numbers, and then we can, discuss them. In terms of 3 weeks ago, to show you the slide that is occurring, those numbers were, instead of 38.53, were 42.50. Still not good, but in 3 weeks, they've continued to slide in the wrong direction. Now, inside the numbers, which I believe is as important as the overall numbers, probably more important, in the COVID category, you have 48% approval, 50% disapproval on COVID. In the economy, 39% approval, 55% disapproval. Those are bad numbers. Commander-in-Chief, 37% approval, 58% disapproval. Taxes, 37% approval, 54% disapproval. Foreign policy. Now, this ties directly to this Afghan debacle. One of President Biden's biggest problems was, and I think I said this on the first show, is no president, no CEO no anybody should set artificial deadlines. Artificial deadlines are a disaster waiting to happen. On foreign policy, 34% approval, 58% disapproval, all from Quinnipiac University poll. These aren't my numbers, these are their numbers. Immigration, this one's hard to believe, guys. 25% approval, 67% disapproval. Border, it gets worse, 23% approval, 67% disapproval. Is President Biden honest? 44% say yes, 50% say no. On his leadership skills, 41% say he has good leadership skills, 56% say he doesn't. And in the last category, competent in running government. Now, this is an overall, like, is this administration competent? 42% say no, or say yes, 55% say no. These numbers, nobody can take a good feeling with this. You just cannot do it because we're Americans. As I said last show, if you are a Donald Trumper and you still think that he's going to be president next week, get over it. It's ridiculous. You know, you're being gaslighted, and quit reading the blogs. Joe Biden's the president of the United States until the next election. But these numbers are incredibly disturbing. And I believe there's a reason outside of some of the performance-related issues that these numbers are that bad. Roll the tape.
Today, we receive more evidence of the progress we're making. And I know we can make a lot more in the days ahead. I want to thank you, and God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.
Allowing a beat there to see if the president took any questions there from the White House as he wraps his remarks on the dismal September jobs report that stunned when it was released this morning as inflation fears and supply chain shortages continue to rattle this fragile economic recovery.
Optically, you can't get much worse than that. And again, you know, he's being advised. There's a lot of times that President Biden goes to the podium and says, they told me not to take questions, or I've been told to call on these two reporters, or I've been told to leave now. I mean, he said all the above. Who are they? The American people deserve to understand who are they, right? Who are these people? I elected Joe Biden. Who are these people? And when we get down to this, okay, you can be a gigantic ideologue and be over on the sidelines cheering, oh man, this is great, you know, we're going to get the White House back and this and that. This is not great. This is not good. There's nothing good in it. And it's not good for our country. But my position is that the messaging is so bad in any walk of life. You know, I was a businessman, obviously. I am a businessman. Messaging, even in business, is gigantically important. When it comes to politics, it's the utmost of importance. All these issues, I haven't heard anybody in the Biden administration address these things. You've got this Jen Psaki. First of all, she has an impossible job. You like her, you don't like her. I don't have any personal feeling either way. But she's got an impossible job, okay? I mean, it's impossible. I mean, you're the captain of the Titanic at this point every day when you go on television. My position is this: if they don't feel cognitively, and I'm not suggesting, but if the administration doesn't feel cognitively that Joe Biden can carry on with a press conference, then send some administration people out and some cabinet people that can start addressing this. Because I think that their numbers could improve if they talked some about all of these issues and they talked about, you know, their side of the story on these issues. But when you don't speak to something and you just let it continue to fester, what you're seeing is you're seeing these poll numbers go into the tank. And again, I know that people in the United States in certain sectors are throwing parties over this. This is nothing to throw a party over. But if they called me into the White House, I'm going to end with this, and they said, all right, Frank, what do we do? I would say we get a group of people together. If they don't think that Joe is up to it, and again, that's not a shot at Joe, but if they don't think he's up to it, then we got to get some spokespeople that are willing to sit down with the American people and explain the Biden administration's positions on all this, because these numbers that I just read off to you are atrocious. They're bad for our country. None of this is good for our country. So that's my Unplugged section, Sarah, and this really does disturb me.
I just can't believe that, like you said, if they don't think he's up to it, then have someone to answer the questions. I just can't believe that we're even having the conversation about having a president that isn't up to answer questions. You're the president of the United States of America, and you can't answer a question. I'm going to say some words there.
No, I understand. But again, I think we can all agree. Overall media, he wasn't vetted properly. Okay? I think there was such an anti-Trump movement. And I understand the anti-Trump movement. Do I think it's right or wrong? I'm not going to say. But I understand it. There was such a movement to get rid of Donald Trump that they would have elected almost anybody.
Right.
Biden was the best choice because he had 40 some odd years in the Senate. He had been vice president for 8 years. What I don't think that we totally understood was his lack of communicative ability. I'm going to even get off the cognitive side.
Okay.
He really can't communicate.
Right.
They have now a makeshift room that's not even in the White House.
I saw that.
That I'm just saying to myself, what the hell is this?
I can't believe that this is in place. In
But
our time
somebody's
right now.
doing this. Somebody is making these decisions.
Pulling
I
the
want to know
strings.
who this somebody is.
Well, then they need to get out there and answer some
Well,
questions.
they told me not to answer this. Who the hell are they?
Right.
I think as Americans, we deserve this because, again, guys, we're not going to become political. We're not going to have ideology that's going to drive it. We're not going to show you all kinds of goofy Republican, news clips. We're not doing that on the show. But somebody has got to ask the question, who's in charge here? What's going on?
Well, people were demanding so much transparency for the last presidency, and I think every presidency, journalists, American people demand transparency, and then suddenly with Biden, they're not. Like, where are all of these questions? Where are all of
But you know why? You know why? They would have elected almost anybody against Trump, and Trump was his own worst enemy.
Because he was so hated, they have put someone in place that cannot do the...
It looks somewhat that way.
Yeah.
But when the president of the United States comes out and says they don't want me to answer questions, as Americans, okay, we deserve to know who they are. But I think they've got to put together a communication program that addresses these 12 issues that I just laid out that are underwater, and at least give the administration's side of this to try to stabilize this thing, because I don't see this getting any better.
No.
I don't know that some of these categories can get worse. On the border, 23%, I think it is. I don't know how you get worse.
I imagine it will get worse, especially if there's not some sort of a change or at least addressing the conversation.
23% approval? How do you get worse than that? That's your uncles, aunts, cousins, and people on your block.
I didn't even think 23 was, I don't think I've ever seen 23.
I understand, but like I said, it's not good for our country.
No.
And I'm here to try to figure out, how do we get through this, right? How do we get through this? And you mentioned something about Kamala Harris that I just want to bring up. And I made comments about, are they on the same page? Was she happy to be put in charge of, it's like the Titanic hits the iceberg, and now, would you want to be the captain now after it hits the iceberg?
Oh, God, no.
And they send you down?
No.
Okay, so we got to give her a little bit of credit, right? She's not dumb. She's a very smart woman, okay? The bottom line is that she got appointed to do something that's maybe one of the biggest disasters in the history of disasters.
And it's not a position I covet. I mean, it's one of the toughest issues in American history, and I'm not saying that I would do any better at the helm, but...
Would you have held the press conference and said, thanks, Joe, but I'm not doing this?
I mean, I don't know that I'd be that brazen, but I would definitely have a side conversation before he announced it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But so the real subject matter here is really, really simple. is that we're all Americans. We ought to all want the same thing. And what we want is a stronger country. The hate's got to go away. We talked about this. You can never get anything done out here. You got to get it done here.
Right.
And we're not going to get it done by continuing just to criticize Joe Biden. We're going to get nowhere.
Right.
The American people are not happy with what's going on. And it's up to the administration to have a better communication policy. If they want to call me, call me. I think I could lay one out because what they're doing right now isn't working.
We'll make sure your number gets on the website.
All right, yeah, that's great.